What's up, everyone? Francis here. So many of you are probably well aware and tuned in on the story of Paul Manafort, the former Trump campaign manager who faced as many as 24 years in prison after being convicted of bank fraud, and he was sentenced to 47 months. Now, before I go on to discuss the discrepancies in the justice system, which proves that there are two justice systems, the reason why I want to bring this up is one, I'm not advocating for a more severe sentence for Paul Manafort. His sentencing is not what I'm here to talk about or outraged about, because the leniency in the justice system is only offered to one group of people, or often times the whiter or richer you are, the more leniency you are offered. So that's what I'm advocating for. That this is an example as to why the justice system, from its very core, is rotten, and should be broken down and rebuilt. It's not broken. I don't like when people say the justice system is broken, because it means that it's not working the way it's intended. It is working 100% the way it was intended, to offer leniency to those that it's supposed to offer leniency to, and to hit those who it's supposed to hit hard with the book and anchor them to the bedrock of society. It's the way that it's supposed to work, and I'll give you many examples. You just scratch the surface and you'll find many. But Khalif Browder's one, jailed for 3 years, held without bail for a backpack which he didn't steal, held in one of the most violent prisons in the world, in Rikers Island. And after being broken down and beaten by several inmates many a times, he killed himself when he came back into society, because he could not rebuild his life after that. Now, I've learned, and I've watched people on Twitter. I tweeted out many examples, and they're saying, "Oh, that was years ago, different justice system, blah blah blah." It doesn't matter what state we're talking about here, or the specifics. It's the fact that there is often a severity that's handled when there's someone who's potentially low income, more often than not, is a person of color. They are crippled by the justice system. They're not offered the same privileges that a rich man like Paul Manafort is. The excuse for Paul Manafort's leniency is his first time offender. The guy was found of 18 charges and found guilty of 8 of them. 2 counts of bank fraud, 5 counts of tax fraud, and 1 count of failing to declare a foreign bank account. Just because the crime is prettier than maybe selling methamphetamine, which the same judge offered the minimum mandatory sentencing to Frederick Turner, a 37-year-old, and offered him the minimum of 40, or not offered him, they sentenced him to a minimum of 40 years in prison for dealing meth. So, because it doesn't sound as pretty, and because it's not just, he's just moving money here, there, this is a guy that took advantage of our democracy and laughed in the face of the justice system in the United States. And just because it's not as upfront as some of the crimes, it's a far more severe crime than many people are put behind bars for years on marijuana charges. You could literally go through each state and you'll find yourself inundated with many examples. And trolls are always going to troll. They're going to come in and they're going to claim that different states, and it's nothing to do with race, and it's nothing to do with class. If you need any more examples of it being two justice systems, then look no further than the example of Crystal Mason. This is one that is just so obvious. Again, people will cling to that's a different state, but okay, let's just look at the logistics. So Paul Manafort allowed to moonwalk his way in, to offering himself over to law enforcement when they had a warrant. Wasn't put in handcuffs and embarrassed the way many people are. And you have someone like Crystal Mason, who casted a provisional ballot while not understanding the strict laws in Texas, stating that electoral laws saying that you're ineligible due to a prior conviction that she had, a minor tax fraud case, which she was probably offered more of her time just for that one example than Paul Manafort is. But she was sentenced to 5 years. 5 years in prison. You tell me that's the same justice system? You tell me that's the same justice system that looks to find ways to rehabilitate people back into society? Or is it just so obvious that the nation's courtrooms and the compassion that's in those courtrooms are more and more present the whiter and the richer someone is. And that may upset a lot of people, but I frankly don't care. I don't care about these trolls on here who are simply on to deflect. They don't care about this situation. But for those of you that have been paying attention to the goings on in this justice system, this is another example. I was reading case by case the Khalif Browder story, which should never go undertold. Should always be overtold in every single case that comes up that's relevant. This is a young man whose life was torn apart for a crime that he did not commit. And then you have examples highlighted in the NPR piece about Manafort, stating that prosecutors described how he assembled a wardrobe that included a $15,000 ostrich leather jacket and more than $1 million worth of suits, and argued that he committed these crimes not out of necessity or hardship, but pure greed. And that is a huge thing to think about in this, because he's committing these crimes whilst also being a very wealthy man, not necessarily needing to go forth and break the law to maybe provide for his family or to try and bring himself out of the depths that this society has tossed him into. He's doing it just because he's a greedy guy that can get away with it in a justice system that is going to offer more often than not a slap in the wrist. Whereas you have people committing crimes, maybe dealing drugs or whatever, to try and get themselves out of such a dire situation, and they are given the maximum more often than not. It's absolutely absurd. And you can scratch the surface and you'll find many different examples, but this is a clear example of the injustices that goes along with a justice system which is built and running exactly how it's supposed to do, and it's not for everyone. It's only for a certain group of people. So I would say let me know what you think, but I'm sure many of these people are already flooding the comment section, so I'm gonna kill them.